I can't see any hands being raised, so I presume that we can accept the accuracy of the minutes of the last meeting. Can somebody propose, please? Thank you, Deputy Chair. Thank you, Brian. Will you all show that you approve the minutes of the last meeting? Thank you very much. And then just in addition for declarations of interest, I had a message to say that the Deputy Clerk is also declaring an interest in relation to that particular item. So we go on to matters arising from the minutes of the last meeting. First of all, item 5.1. I think the Chief wants to give an update. Am I right?
Thank you very much, Chair. Bochr da, pawb. Yes, 5.1, we in the minutes was about the Chief Fire and Rescue Advisor's review into firefighting techniques. That review has completed. The report is in its final draft, and we will be bringing it to the Fire Authority meeting in July in order that we can give it our full attention. There are areas in that report that we are already making good. So we won't wait till that Fire Authority meeting, but we thought it would be useful to have a longer session. And so we will present that paper at the next meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief, for that update. And then going on to item 5.3 with an update on the departure of principal officers.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, an update regarding the service leadership team. Those of you that have read item 10 will see that Stuart Millington, after returning from his secondment in South Wales as an interim Chief Fire Officer, has decided to move on and has put in his notice of retirement. So Stuart will be leaving us at the end of June. And I also want to praise the Fire Authority that the Deputy Chief Fire Officer, Stuart Forshaw, has decided to revive his original wishes, which were to retire from the service. You may recall he was intending to retire at the end of December, and he will be leaving at the end of this month, and we'll be seeing him on Friday to wish him well. I'd like to thank both officers for their work over many, many years and what they have contributed to North Wales Fire and Rescue Service, and I want to wish them well in the future. Thank you. Diolch.
Thank you, Chief. On behalf of all the authority members, I'd like to echo that and to thank ACFO Stuart Millington and Deputy Chief Fire Officer Stuart Forshaw for their loyal service and wish them both all the best for the future. I think Councillor Sharon Dolman, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just to echo that, I wish both officers well for the future. But as the Fire Authority representative on the EDI committee, I would like to express my thanks to the Deputy, or DEP as we had to call him round the table, Stuart Forshaw. Stuart worked really hard to pull together what is a great team of people from within the fire service to serve on the EDI committee. He was committed to equality for all. He was respectful to everyone and the different opinions held by those of us around the table. We all had a voice, we all sat as equals. I'm sure the DEP will be pleased and encouraged with the work the Cultural Change team are undertaking and are implementing to take the service forward. The DEP was also committed, as we all know, to the Welsh language, and he'd made a real concerted effort to learn the language, which he practiced whenever he could. On a personal note, I'd like to thank the DEP for making me feel so welcome when I joined both the Fire Authority and the EDI committee, and for taking the time to personally deliver my induction into the EDI committee. I know what a busy schedule he had, but he took the time with me and answered all the daft questions that I had. So diolch, Dep, and enjoy your retirement.
Thank you, Sharon, for that tribute. So back to the minutes of the last meeting. Item 6.3, we heard the sad news that former firefighter Brian Gorling had died, and It was requested that somebody attended the funeral, and just for information, I did attend that funeral on behalf of Fire Authority members. I can't see any other matters arising from the minutes of the last meeting unless anybody else can see something that they want to raise. Okay, I can't see any hands being raised, so we can move on to the next item agenda, which is the chair's report. So you will have seen the report of the activities that myself and the deputy have been involved in over the last quarter. Are there any comments or questions arising from that report? I can't see any hands being raised, so it is just for noting. Can I have somebody propose that we note the report, please? Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Brynmawr. Diolch yn fawr. Will you all show that you accept that report? Diolch yn fawr. So we move on to item number 7, which is the emergency cover review. I think it's ACFO Anthony Jones that's going to present this report. Thank you, Ant.
Diolch, Chair. Good morning, everybody. This report is to provide members of the authority with an update on the work of the emergency cover task and finish subgroup. This was set up in response to the recommendations from the authority on the 20th of January this year, that officers continue to devise and test alternative solutions with our representative bodies within our agreed budget to address emergency cover in rural locations. Since January 2025, there have been 5 meetings of the emergency cover task and finish subgroup. This group consists of FBU officials, officers from the transformational team, and also staff. The group has worked together to revive an option from the work that was completed last year of how to improve the self-resilience in our current establishment on all of our whole-time fire stations and making that more robust. So this subgroup revisited this option and worked jointly to produce a draft collective agreement. This collective agreement sets out measures to improve the self-resilience within those current duty systems at our 8 whole-time and day crewing stations. And this will allow for other posts within our establishment to then be incorporated into pilots to provide a more effective and efficient model of emergency cover across the whole of North Wales. The principles of this collective agreement have been agreed, which include the need to finalise associated policies and complete an early equality impact assessment. In addition, local FBU officials have advised that they need to obtain sign-off from the National General Secretary. The agreement outlines how the self-resilience in the current duty systems could be enhanced in several ways, and the starting point being an alignment of shift start times to make best use of our existing resilience arrangements. Whilst this could be realised in the short term through a standard 90 days notice, in the spirit of working together, this will commence on the 1st of September, subject to that further collective work around the associated policies and procedures. The first full 12 months of the 0800 STAR which will align both whole-time duty systems to a 10-hour day shift, will start on the 1st of January, and this will coincide with the start of the leave year, which, unless we envisage this pilot running for 24 months. The collective agreement also demonstrates other areas of change, such as accommodating more training on duty and to reduce the accumulation of time in lieu, and also other gaps and shortfalls within the existing duty systems. In paragraph 16 of the report within your packet highlights that this has been approved. This collective agreement was only approved locally, and that it needed sign-off by an executive council member. I'm very pleased to report this morning that following our North Wales FBU meeting yesterday, Rebecca and Terry have both spoken to me this morning and confirmed they have committed to signing and agreeing the collective agreement. And also this has been signed off by Ben Selby at an executive council member level. So I'm really pleased to report to members that whilst the paper highlights there was a commitment to sign in principle, that they have committed to sign that agreement. Whilst we haven't been able to facilitate it physically for today's meeting, it will happen in the next few days. The ECR collective agreement has been to our joint consultation and negotiation committee throughout February and April, and that's where we were also able to share the workings in social partnership with our other representative bodies. So the recommendations within the papers are that members note that officers have continued to work with representative bodies in social partnership to develop a way forward with the emergency cover review. Note that progress has been made in drafting a collective agreement, with it being agreed in principle by the Fire Brigade Union at a meeting of the Joint Consultation and Negotiation Committee on the 4th of April 2025. Appreciate the continued effort of all parties to progress a solution and introduce a pilot to demonstrate the self-sufficiency of the staffing levels at the current hold time stations. Acknowledge that by demonstrating this self-sufficiency, that there is scope to introduce pilots to utilise posts from the remaining establishment to provide a more efficient and effective emergency cover model across the whole of North Wales. And Chair, if I would, I'd just like to add that this collective working has been, Terry and Rebecca and the staff involved, Tom and Nick, have been absolutely excellent working together. They've really pushed and had difficult conversations with ourselves and with their members, recognising the real importance of, based on your as the authorities' desire to see a solution and see us moving forward in emergency cover review. I must give them credit. They've really worked tirelessly to bring this together, also having to negotiate nationally with Ben Selby. Diolch yn fawr, Chair.
Thank you, Ant, and I'd echo those comments, and certainly we are grateful for the commitment and the cooperation shown by FBU representatives, but I'd also like to pay tribute to you, Ant, as well, because I know that you and your colleagues have worked extremely hard over many months to actually get this agreement over the line. This is very positive news. I know that the chief wants to say something, and I can see that Mark wants to say something as well. But I also do have a question, which is, can you perhaps explain to members how exactly this will reduce the risk that we've identified in terms of day cover in rural areas? Because that's what it's all about, is minimising the risk. So I don't know if you want to answer that first, or did the chief want to come in first? I'll let the chief come in first whilst
I'm happy to as well.
over that. Thank you.
I think it's indicative of how challenging this agreement has been, because it isn't easy to explain how, by putting all these different pieces of the jigsaw together, it actually gets us to the point where we start to mitigate that risk in rural areas. But it does, and it's what I wanted to do was echo what you've just said, Chair, about my thanks, my complete admiration to our FBU colleagues, to Nick and Tom, to Ant, and to Helen, who has been chairs the joint trade union meeting. You know, they have worked tirelessly to make this happen, and I know that there will be colleagues out there who will be concerned because it means changes to how they work. And we will do it in the same spirit of social partnership as we have been doing all along. And I have just got to congratulate everybody who's been involved in this very, very long but very measured negotiations. And I'll let Ant try and explain about the jigsaw pieces. And if we need to then go over it again in slow time, I'm happy to do so. Thank you, Chair.
Diolch, Chief. Diolch, Chair. So in the main ebb and detail within the collective agreement is for us to make our existing hold time stations self-resilient, and by making them self-resilient, so cover their own absenteeism, realign their annual leave, realigning the start and finish times, it allows us to have confidence that within the establishment budget that we hold for our whole time staff, we have a number of posts which are over-established. By getting our existing whole time stations self-sufficient, self-resilient, we'll then have the confidence to use that establishment budget to test some pilots. And what we want to do is to, as soon as you know, the hard work carries on from today in relation to commencing the detailed working with Rebecca, Terry and staff to negotiate and consult on what will be pilots. And what we want to do is put whole time firefighters in those rural areas as soon as this year. to demonstrate that we can deliver a more efficient and effective whole-time resource in partnership with our on-call colleagues in those rural areas. So this really does allow us to test and model new ways of emergency response in those areas identified within the emergency cover review, and we will pilot those alongside the pilot of this collective agreement. So we will look to evaluate that on a quarterly basis over the next couple of years and really test and find that effective blended approach that, for example, having whole-time firefighter jobs in those rural areas identified in the emergency cover review, what that will give us in social value. So for creating whole-time work opportunities, allowing us to increase our prevention and protection work, also supporting our on-call colleagues in the primary focus, which is to make their appliances available. So we're really optimistic in relation to trying something different in relation to pilots, working alongside our existing duty systems, but we will review and monitor this really closely over the next couple of years and give it a really good detailed evaluation before committing to a new business as usual.
Thank you for that further explanation, Ant, which is very helpful. Just before I bring in Councillor Mark Young, I think the Chief wants to come back in. Thank you, Chief.
I think that was a very good explanation, and I'm conscious that we have our on-call colleagues who will be watching this meeting today, and they will be wondering whether it is the day staffing model that we talked about in the initial emergency cover review consultation. It's not. What we're trying to pilot is a nucleus crewing, similar to which we had in North Wales many years ago, where the whole-time firefighters actually form a crew with the retained firefighters in that area. So I'd just like to reassure our retained firefighters that that they are absolutely essential to keeping that pump on the run.
Thank you for that, Chief. Mark, do you want to come in? Thank you.
Yes, Jochen Vau, Chair, and good morning, everyone. So, yeah, this has been debated for a long time. Senior officers have made clear the risks, and our monitoring officers shared the legal risks. So I don't think it'd be okay not to push back and just check we're okay with the timings of this. So I know it's difficult, and I know there's a lot of work to do, but it does feel a long time away when we understand the risks involved. So I'd just like some feedback on, are we okay with the timings? Because I think we just need the answer on that is the best date we can do when we all know the risks, and we've all been very open. So I understand the challenge, but I would just like to have some thoughts on the implementation date of January next year. Thank you, Chair. Jochen Vau.
Thank you, Mark. Over to the Chief. Thank you.
Yes, I can understand Councillor Young's concern. The risk remains. So we are going to use some funding from our reserves, transformational reserve, in order to implement the pilot on stations sooner than the dates that we might well be releasing through resilience. So although the date for the official pilot of the self-sufficiency is the 1st of January, we will be bringing it in the beginning of September, but recognizing that it will take some time to actually release the funding, we are going to allocate some of our reserves to test out and bring in, I am hoping as early as this summer, the pilot around nucleus crewing, because you're right, Councillor Young, this has gone on too long. We cannot keep this risk. So we are going to try and implement something as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any other questions or comments?
Can I just come back on that, Chair, very quickly? So that's great. So I would just ask the question, do we need something in the recommendations, or that being minuted being enough? And I'll take the advice of yourself, Chair, and members, what we think on that. So that's really good to hear. I just wonder whether it needs to be in recommendations or that being minuted is enough. Jochen Vau, thank you.
I think my own view, Mark, would be that just that it's minuted there, and then we can obviously sort of monitor and review the fact that it has actually been covered in the discussion.
Okay.
If you're okay with that.
Okay. Yeah, no joking about, and good work. Thank you.
Yeah. I think, Gareth, did you want to come in as the monitoring officer? Did I see your hand come up before?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Clearly, it has taken a while for the authority to be able to find a solution to the problems that we'd identified. The method of finding that is in accordance with our duties in Wales now. And the mention there of social partnership is very important because that is partly what we're required to do within Wales. So we have followed the correct process to identify a solution, and it is a complex issue that we need to, and a complex set of solutions to a complex problem. You always get credit, so to speak, for the time that it takes to implement solutions like that.
Right, thank you for that, Gareth. And then also for the information of members, not that I wish to sort of in any way sort of take away the positivity of what we seem to have agreed on. I know that there were discussions previously about possibly looking to introduce 11-hour shift patterns as opposed to 10-hour shift patterns. And members will be aware that Mid and West Wales are trying to introduce 12-hour shift patterns. I'm just wondering if somebody could explain as to why we're not going down that road, but have chosen to go down this particular road. Thank you. Chief?
If I can come in. You're right, we did discuss piloting for 1 year 10-hour shifts, and then for the following year 11-hour shifts. And we are very mindful of the recommendations of the Chief Fire and Rescue Advisor with regards to mitigating the risk of fatigue for firefighters. But after some consideration, we decided that that would be something that we would address separately from the emergency cover review. And in order to progress with this agreement, then that is something that we will return to in the near future, but we have kept separately. So that's the 10-hour shifts is so that our day crewed and our 24-hour stations are then all working 10 hours on stations, which enables them to be able to swap over and fill gaps on each station. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that explanation, Chief. Councillor Gareth?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment on the relationship with the FBU, where we sat here, 12 months ago. It's been transformational, hasn't it, really? We've totally turned it on its head, and we're now having a real positive, everybody sitting around the table and working together for a positive outcome. And that goes through the cultural change review. It also goes through the training, sorry, I'll keep my teeth in today. The training centre project. It's how we embrace the feedback and positively move forward. So I just want to say a big thanks to the management, and hopefully that will go forward from here with the working with the FBU. Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth. I fully agree with those comments. Does any other member have any comments or questions in relation to this report? I can't see any other hands being raised. In that case, you've heard the recommendations from Ant. Can I have somebody propose that we accept those recommendations, please?
Happy, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. Can I have a second there? Thank you, Deputy Chair. Will you all show that you approve the recommendations? Diolch yn fawr. Thank you. So moving on to the next item, which is actually the Training Centre project update from ACFO Justin Evans. Over to you, Justin. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Bore da pawb. So today's paper presents to members a strategic update on the progress of the Service Training Centre project, incorporating recent developments from our business case workshops, our updated risk position, our revised timeline, and our current areas of focus. Members will be aware from previous reports that I brought here that the Training Centre project was established to respond to risks associated with current training arrangements and to provide a fit-for-purpose facility that meets the long-term needs of the service. Now, this project started as far back as 2022, and over the past 12 months has moved from a high-level concept to a structured development supported by enhanced and formal governance and external expertise. The last report I brought to the authority focused on our procurement strategy for external consultancy services, and I can confirm that since that last meeting, we have appointed Mersey Internal Audit Agency to help us develop our outline and full business cases. Now, MIAA are working with us to develop business cases in the 5-case model, which is the standard recommended by Welsh Government. And we see it, this will help us to ensure that we can demonstrate our project is strategically aligned, it's financially sound, that we can manage it, and it offers value for money. It will really, in effect, demonstrate we've left no stone unturned in the development of our proposals. We've also recently appointed our construction project manager and our ecologist, and procurement work for the appointment of our design consultant who will assist us with the detailed design work continues, and we're expecting that to be completed in the next few weeks. The project remains on track with significant progress being made in this reporting period. As Councillor Sandlands mentioned, we've had a number of workshops this month, where we've worked with, we've had all partners and stakeholders around the table, including our trade union representatives, in terms of looking at the project moving forward. The overall project remains rated amber. It reflects ongoing risks in relation to funding, staffing capacity, and pressures timescales. The revised REBA Gateway 4 target is April 2027, and that date reflects all of the work that we need to do up until the project construction phase, including all the decision processes as well. So the project team continues to take steps to mitigate key risks, which are detailed within the paper. If I can move to the recommendations, if members could note, the revised critical path and target of REBA Gateway 4 to April 2027. Note our progress in defining the scope, specification and delivery model through the business case workshops. Note there are key risks have been identified on the project risk register and that we have put measures in place to mitigate them, and that we are strategically aligned with broader service community risk management and wellbeing goals.
Thank you, Justin. And can I also thank Councillor Gareth Sandilands for his involvement on the project board as the authority member representing us there. Gareth, I can see that you've already got your hand up, and I was going to invite you to come in anyway. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you again, Chair. I mean, we met for the first day. Well, I met for the first time in the early April workshop, and I have to say we had a really good outcome where we discussed key outcomes. And the key outcomes, I'll just make a quick list, is the safety and training quality of what we provide, the modern and inclusive facilities, environmental, and the economic considerations, but also we're looking at the future proofing and development of this in North Wales Fire Authority, community and collaboration, accessibility and security, and the overall satisfaction, what it means to not only the employees, but the residents and the authority as a whole. This, to me, this project has got to be delivered on time, within budget, and fulfills what we need for the 21st century. What we've got now is totally inadequate, and we need to move on. And it's great to see the amount of qualified people around that table, speaking from the FBU to various stations, various geographies across the board, and bringing in MIAA is definitely giving that professional project management expertise to it. So I look forward to working with it over the next few years, and really getting the heart of what the authority wants out of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth, for that feedback. Deputy Chair? You're on mute, Paul.
Diolch yn fawr, Chair. You've always known my feelings on the training centre. Gareth Sanderland has pinched all my thunder, and I firmly agree with everything he said. We want the best training facilities for our firefighters in North Wales, and I'm speaking as a former trainer. I spent 8 years in training school in the Old Clwyd, and all the things we wished for in those days, I'm hoping that we can get some of them, at least decent classrooms, decent changing areas, and good facilities for our firefighters. We want the best for North Wales, and I hope we get the best for North Wales. Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd.
Thank you, Paul. John Brynmore?
Nice and short, just agree with what Gareth and Paul have just said. We need it. Let's get on with it.
Champion. I can't see any other hands being raised. So in that case, can we move to the recommendations that you have heard? Or David, in case you don't even.
Yeah, just about the caution before we vote, and not suggesting for a moment that you should go against, but there is a considerable financial commitment here, and you can see from the executive summary of the report, the overall project remains rated amber, primarily reflecting risks of funding. It would cost a lot for us to fund it ourselves, and I think we should still continue to seek Welsh Government funding or part funding for this project, and explain to them continually. I'm sure the Chair and Chief have been doing so at any opportunity, that really doing training in such a huge rural environment does cost, and we need to get every opportunity. We need to try and get it across the line to get some part funding from the government, I think. Otherwise, it's going to be a burden on us in the future. But as members have already said, it's something we need, and we may have to stomach it. But in fairness, I think we should try and get some grant funding for this project.
Yeah, thank you, David. And yeah, you wouldn't be fulfilling your role as Treasurer if you didn't sort of utter that word of caution in relation to the financial challenges. And I'm sure the Chief will agree with me. We do regularly send a message to Welsh Government that it's no good that the Fire Advisor is coming up with all these recommendations about the training, how training methods need to be improved and brought up to speed if we haven't got the right facilities, and we need that financial assistance in order to provide those right facilities. Gareth, Councillor Gareth Jones. Gareth?
Yeah, just on the same theme, if we continue to press ahead with this, is there a danger that the Welsh Government will assume that we can fund it ourselves, or we get to the stage where we've committed so much funds and resources that there's actually no going back? Is there any merits in stalling it and saying, actually, until we've identified the funding and get support from Welsh Government, this is as far as it goes, even though there's a real need for it?
Good question. There's a number of hands being raised. I'll come over to ACFO Helen MacArthur first, and then Justin, and then Gareth.
Diolch, Gadeirydd. I think it's an excellent question in terms of the timing. The work we're doing currently is taking us to the next gateway, and the next gateway is that final approval of not only the design, the costings, but also the funding. So the work we're doing now is about building up the design, building up the costings, building up the funding models, which will include linking with the Welsh Government to seek any available resource there is. But it might also consider any sponsorship that we might be able to get as well. So I think it's an excellent point, but I think it's about providing assurance that the next gateway is about between October and December 2026, which is when the full and final decision is to be made.
Okay. On that point, then, I'd like to make it clear that this is that stage, and that I'd be really reluctant and need to look at it really closely unless we can identify for other sources of funding to help with this, because I don't think the local authorities have got the resources to be able to fund it, because that's where the burden will lie eventually, won't it? It'll come back to the local authorities to fund it if the Welsh Government don't fund it.
Yeah. Councillor Gareth Sandilands. Gareth, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, thank you. It's just to echo really what ACFO Helen MacArthur said. I had exactly the same conversation, Gareth. Don't you worry. I know fully well what our local authorities and the pressures we've got under at the moment are. And it would be a great opportunity for Welsh Government to fund a fully funded training centre. I share your concern about delaying it, but the longer we delay it, the more it will cost overall. We know the slippage, we know that there's inflationary figures, and it could be considerably more if we leave it a few more years. As it stands, the timeline is fairly conservative. I think it could be done quicker, but I also think that we need to take this in full consideration on what external partners need to fund it. And in no doubt, we cannot afford to serve it through our local authorities. So that is in no doubt in my mind that the financial package has to come from partners and not County Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth. Councillor Chris Hughes. Morning, Chris.
Good evening. I just wanted to support Gareth. I think I've held cabinet posts in Conway where we've discussed, do we move forward, do we not move forward with things. My experience is that Welsh Government love shovel-ready projects, and I think if we can get it to that stage, that's when you've got a chance of potentially getting Welsh Government funding. If we back off and don't progress it to that stage, then they'll say, well, you know, where's your data, where's your figures, what's behind it? And we won't have that information. So I'm happy to proceed on the basis which has been said, that it is to the next phase, and then hopefully we'll have a shovel-ready project that people will buy into.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the comments and feedback, everybody. So I can't see any other hands being raised, so we will move to the recommendations. Can I have somebody to propose that we accept the recommendations, please? Thank you, Chris. Seconder, please. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Will you show that you're all in agreement? Diolch yn fawr. That's been passed. So we go on to the next item, which is the Independent Cultural Review, item number 9, and it's over to the Chief, I think, for the report. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. This is the first opportunity that we've had to present the Independent Cultural Report to the whole Fire Authority. It has been to the executive panel, but this is, as I say, the most appropriate Fire Authority to present it to. In the report, you'll see the background reminding members of why we undertook this review. Although the Minister did not see us in the same light as she perceived the culture in South Wales Fire Service at that point in time, there was concerns around culture, and ourselves and Mid and West Fire Service said that we would be willing to undertake and actually would value what we would find out of an independent cultural review. And then the rest of the paper talks about how we commissioned the review and the methodology of Crest Advisory, who they spoke to, sort of the numbers of people. About a third of all our employees participated, either on survey or in interviews and face-to-face interviews. So, you know, it was a well managed project, and in order to again help members understand what some of the key points were, you'll see in the appendices there is a list of positives and negatives, and in order that there should be no influence on those positives and negatives, we actually used Copilot. We put the reports through that for it to pick out what seem to be the most salient points. Now, where we go from here. We have taken a slightly different approach to what might have been anticipated in a fire and rescue service. So instead of producing an action plan in splendid isolation and then getting on with it, because that is often how we have done things in the past, because it's really important that we take people with us. And I think the emergency cover review and that social partnership has been a real example of how we want to work with people and not do things to them. We have used this time to socialise the report. We've had events with our middle leaders. We've had events with supervisory leaders. We've worked with our rep bodies, and we've had 2 workshops in which we have asked both the service leadership team and then the wider organisation what their priorities are and what their suggestions are. So that last meeting was about a week ago. We're now in a position to gather all those ideas and thoughts and come up with that action plan. The action plan will be ready for the next executive panel, but it will be formally presented to the Fire Authority meeting in July. In the meantime, I have set up a cultural improvement board and in discussions with the chair and Councillor Dolman, they have not only been at the workshops to oversee what has been said and what people are saying, but I asked them if they will provide that scrutiny and overview role at the cultural board, but we'll talk about that in the future. So that board will meet in sync with the service leadership team, so every 6 weeks, and we will monitor both the action plan and also we are, and this is another piece of work for you, I'm afraid, and your team, to put together a cultural indicators so that we can check progress of how, not just through surveys, and we will be doing our fire family survey this September, but we can also look at those indicators that give us early warnings of where there might be issues. So number of complaints, sickness levels, things like that, all feeds into cultural indicators, so that we can see progress and that we can report at each fire authority how we are progressing with that, not only the action plan, but more importantly, how the culture is evolving within North Wales Fire and Rescue Service. Thank you. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Chief. Over to members for any questions or comments.
If I haven't got any questions immediately, I have just glanced at the recommendations, and one of the points that I do need to emphasise is the fact that Welsh Government are very keen to work with us and to support us not only with some financial assistance, but in seeking expertise to help us. Now, I have a meeting this Friday with Welsh Government officials in order to confirm what that package of support might look like, but it would be helpful if the Fire Authority could approve that request for financial or in-kind support from Welsh Government. It basically authorises them to be able to offer us to that assistance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief. So the recommendations before us are: number 1, acknowledge receipt of the report of the Independent Cultural Review, and number 2, approve the request for financial or in-kind support from the Welsh Government to continue the cultural journey of the North Wales Fire and Rescue Service. Can I have somebody propose that we... Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Brian. Will you all show that you agree? Diolch yn fawr. So that's passed. So we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the appointment process for the post of Assistant Chief Fire Officer. It's over to our clerk, Gareth, for this report. Diolch yn fawr, Gareth.
Sorry, Cadeirydd, just having trouble getting my microphone off mute there. Chair, the Chief has advised the authority of the position with regard to the principal officers. As it says within the report, appointment of the senior leadership team is the responsibility of the authority and is something that only the authority can do. Clearly not appropriate to have all of the authority seek to interview panel members. Or candidates rather, so we need to appoint a panel, an appointments committee, which is mentioned in the recommendations. That committee will then go through the appointments process and bring recommendations back to council for the full authority for the final appointment. Historically, Chair, we have committees of 6, 1 from each constituent council. We'd be looking for that, and we would take volunteers outside of the meeting towards pulling that committee together. Just the Chief has her hand up, Chair, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't sure if you'd finished or not, Gareth. Yes, Chief, do you want to come in? Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Gareth. I believe the Constitution says that it is 6 members who sit on the executive panel. So we have the chair and we have the deputy chair. So I suppose we will be looking for volunteers from the other 4 councils. And you will see that the indications for when that process might take place will be somewhere between sort of mid to late June. So depending on who volunteers, we will determine the timetable to fit in with their availability. I'm only saying that in case anybody has got a holiday booked at that time and therefore won't be able to participate. Thank you.
Cynghorydd Gwynfor Owen, bore da, croeso Gwynfor.
Welcome, Gwynfor. Apologies that I was a little late at the beginning of the meeting. I just want to make the point the Chief was saying now about having 1 member from each authority. And I think what's important too is to ensure that there are at least 2 members of the panel are women.
Yeah.
You're on mute, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Chris. Chris, did you want to come in? You've got your hands raised, or is it to vote for the recommendation?
No, Chair, I did want to come in. I take on board the point which has been made about ensuring there's a gender balance, but I also think with this is about culture, and it's not just about men and women. It's about a whole range of things for people with disabilities and everything else. And I think we need to ensure that there is the culture that we hope that there's somebody that can represent all of the cultural values that we hope to instill within the documentation and within the reports when they come through.
Chris, I fully agree with you, and I think that we find ourselves in a difficult position because the obvious choice to be on the appointments panel, in my view, would be Councillor Sharon Dolman as our EDI representative on the authority. But Sharon isn't on the executive panel, she's on the audit panel. So Gareth, I don't know if there's a way around this, because to me, it doesn't make sense that the Constitution says that the appointments panel has to only come from the executive panel. So are you able to comment on that, Gareth? Thank you.
Chair, that's a tricky one. The Constitution does set out our rules. It does set out, and we do it because there are important principles behind the rules within the Constitution. The Chief and I can take a look offline about who we might be able to include within the committee. If you wanted to add a further resolution to the effect that the authority would like the panel to be representative of I'm trying to do this in a way that sounds that doesn't sound twee, Chair, that reflects the cultural diversity or the diversity of the organisation, so that we can and we have a hook on which to hang changes should we need to do so.
Thank you for that, Gareth. Councillor Gareth Jones and then the Deputy Chair.
Probably far too simplistic, but rather than change the Constitution, why don't we just appoint Sharon onto the appropriate committee?
That sounds a great idea if we could do it, Deputy Chair.
I was going to say that depends on her council. That's a choice they make.
Chair, I was going to say, can you just remind me, have we got any females on the executive?
Yes, we do have.
And I could take the part of disabled because I'm disabled. So that's one of the items covered, Chair.
Okay, I think it may be difficult for us to sort of resolve this in this particular meeting, but I think we can sort of take note of what's been said and we can sort of take it away. And if members will sort of allow us to put their confidence and trust in this, that we will try and come up with the best, fair, equitable, efficient solution that we can. Anne, you want to come in, and then John Brynmar.
Oh, thank you, Diolch fawr, Sir Cadeirydd.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
If you want ladies on that, but as a new member, although I have been a member in the past, I haven't been on the fire authority for the last 3 years. So I don't know if you feel I'm suitably qualified, but, you know, I could cover my expertise of being carers champion, older people and so forth. But happy to just volunteer if you're short. Thank you. Diolch fawr.
Thank you very much for that, Anne. Diolch yn fawr, but I think you've also been placed on the audit committee and not the executive panel. This makes, you know, this is what's a bit nonsensical about the process. John Brynmar.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Is it possible to send out the names that are on the executive panel for us, please?
Yes, we can arrange to do that. Gareth, you want to come back in?
Chair, I think you're going to take this approach anyway, but rather than try and go through that process now, if we can add that third recommendation, because having quickly refreshed my memory of the membership of the executive panel, it is certainly quite male dominated. We might struggle. We might struggle. So if we add that third recommendation, then that, as I say, gives us a hook on which something with which to work.
Okay, that's fine. So we have a third recommendation. So the recommendations are: note the process as outlined below and confirm the membership of the appointments committee, which will also take into the need for diversity across the committee. Does that sound okay, Gareth? Yeah. Will you all, can I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Gareth. Will you show that you're all in agreement? Diolch yn fawr. That's been passed. So we now move on to the next item, which is item 11, which is the provisional outturn for 2024-25. And I think it's over to Elgan Roberts, Head of Finance. Bawada, Elgan.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. I shall present my report in Welsh, but I'm happy to take questions in Welsh or English. The purpose of the report is to provide an update on the revenue and capital expenditure forecasts for 2024-25 at the end of March. So it's worth noting that as we work through the annual accounts, the situation may change. So in the report, the final budget for 2024-25 was approved by authority on 22nd January 24 with a net budget requirement of 48.32 million, an underspend of 0.33 million is forecast, taking into account all expenditure, income and planned movements to reserves. I shall go through a report on the income. We have had 227,000 received from local authorities as a escape grant, and have also received 208,000 from the Welsh Government to support salary pressures, which has helped towards the underspend. And we have also received 491,000 from the Welsh Government for capital expenditure at the end of the financial year, which has been used for the purchase of radios following the Grenfell Tower recommendations and for electric vehicles. And I should like to thank the Welsh Government on that point for the capital allocation and our officers for their work in ensuring that the radios on cars are bought before the end of the financial year. Employee costs represent over 70% of expenditure in the 2024-25 staffing budget, and we foresee an underspend of over 1.1 million. I should go into more detail in the report, but I shall get some of the highlights. There are efforts to increase the number of retained duty system firefighters, as can be seen in Table 2, where you see the number each quarter, and we can see that the number in each quarter is under budget. But we've also seen a reduction in March in full-time equivalent, and this is for two reasons. We have conducted a contractual review to ensure that the retained fees match the hours given. Also, there has been an increase in dual contract staff, where full-time staff supply for the retained duty system. But this arrangement usually results in fewer retained hours, and that has a further impact. In addition, the service has experienced a number of specialist vacancies within the corporate planning, ICT and fleet, and these roles remain essential but have contributed to the underspend. For non-pay costs, we foresee an underspend of just under 300,000. There is pressure in the budget on vehicles, personal protective equipment, and an increase in SLAs, but we've also seen some savings, particularly in buildings and diesel, oil, electric, and so on going down. The budget has also achieved repeat savings of over $500,000 for Firelink and over 200,000 for BT1. Moving on to capital expenditure, we have a budget this year of 5.6 million and 1.1 million of rollover funding from previous years, and we foresee expenditure of 3.4 million by the end of March, and with a requirement for rollover funding of 2.2 million for next financial year. And to conclude on the use of reserves, the provisional outturn assumes that earmarked reserves will not be used during the year, and Table 3 includes movements to and from the reserves either due to uncertainty about future liability or to cover one-off costs not completed during 2024. So to move to the recommendations, it is recommended that members note the draft revenue and outturn projection for financial year 2024-25, note the risks associated with inflation, tariffs and supply chain issues, and approve movement to or from the earmark reserves and the general fund. Thank you. Thank you very much, Elgan.
Questions for Elgan from members, please. David, chi eisiau dod I fewn? Diolch.
Yeah.
David? Yes, shall come in at the beginning. Normally I wait till the end, but just to thank Elgan for the report and all the work behind it. It's a good deal of a headache to bring these reports forward so early in the year, fair play, and to bring all the figures together. Some good news there, of course, but a lot of this has been projected during the year, hasn't it, Elgan? There is not a great deal of news there, in fact, but the table with the retained staff is a picture of success. In fact, we have been talking about increasing the numbers since I have been with the authority some 3 years ago, and in the last 6 months that has happened, and it is still an underspend in the year because of that half year, and then that is good news, but it causes something of an underspend. But of course, the $500,000 was that Firelink, where there was uncertainty about that for, well, until the end of year quarter, if I remember correctly, with the legal challenge, and that was found in our favor. That is an unexpected saving in that final quarter. So there is some underspend that was expected, and some additional amount was projected, and some came in later in the year. So the report is to be welcomed, I think, and thank you for presenting it in Welsh too, Elgan. It is very good to hear that. Thank you. Thank you, David.
Questions or comments from members? As the Treasurer has pointed out, there's no sort of real surprises in this report, but it was, yes, very good news to hear that sort of we won the case in terms of Firelink and got that money back. Can't see any hands being raised. Can I have somebody to propose the recommendations in that case? Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mark. Will you all show that you agree? That's been passed. So we go on to the next item, which is item number 12, the budget confirmation for 2025-26. And it's over to you, Helen, I think, to introduce this item.
Diolch, Cadeirydd, and Bore da pawb. I think it's the time of year when in finance we actually work in 3 different financial years. So Elgan has provided that outline on the previous financial year, and here we are in the first month. So what I'd like to do today is just talk members through some of the work that we've done since the January meeting, because at that time there were a number of risks and uncertainties when we set the budget. By way of a recap, members will recall that we confirmed the budget of 52.389 million. In addition to that, we were going to utilise some reserves, and that gave us a net levy requirement of 51.8. This report confirms that levy requirement, but at that time there were a number of uncertainties, which actually included the outcome of the national legal challenge relating to the Airwave contract. And as we've just heard from Elgan's report, that was a potential risk to us, not only in 24/5, but also in 25/6, and that was about £500,000. As you've just heard, we're able to confirm that the Court of Appeal found in favour of the public sector, and therefore this is no longer an open risk for this year's budget. Similarly, at the time of writing the paper, the pay awards for 25/26 were outstanding, and this actually remains the case, but there have been a number of negotiation meetings, and currently there is an offer both for local government colleagues and also firefighters of 3.2%. This is slightly higher than what we have in the budget, and that financial risk, if it is accepted, will be managed internally. At the time of setting the budget, we included a provisional capital programme of 6.1 million, Although at that time, the schemes, some of them had been considered by the budget scrutiny, but some of them were still outstanding. Business cases totaling 3.3 were considered at the budget scrutiny, and as you can see from Appendix 8, the final schedule has now been confirmed. And the outstanding business cases will be subject to review, scrutiny and challenge through the service leadership team. And then finally, the authority also approved expenditure of 2.1 million in respect of the training centre, and we talked about that earlier, and that was approved in October of last year, and that will be funded through reserves. As ever, since approving the budget, there's been global uncertainty around the potential tariffs, and this has been very carefully monitored through our procurement team and also through our budget managers to ensure that not only are we still able to procure goods and services, but they remain in line with our financial expectations. So, Chair, today I'm seeking final approval of the budget and the capital programme. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Just one question from me before I throw it out to members for comments and questions. You mentioned about sort of the national pay offer in terms of employees, which is 3.2%, which hopefully will be accepted, but it is slightly higher than what had been forecast and budgeted for. And then I think you said that it would be managed internally. I don't know if that's an accountancy term or not, but could you perhaps elaborate on what managed internally means? Diolch.
Yes, of course. In overall terms on our pay budgets, the risk will be between £50,000 and £80,000. Currently, we have a number of vacancies. We do have vacancy factors. So I am comfortable that we will be able to absorb and manage that cost without needing to either seek to use reserves or indeed increase the levy.
Thank you for that explanation. Over to members for any comments or questions in relation to the report, please. I can't see any hands. Yes, Mark, and then the Treasurer.
Yeah, no, Joachim, it's just a very quick one. As chair of the budget working group, it's just to thank elected members who sit on that and do the extra work, and officers. It's a good setup. It works well. I hope we carry on doing it. But it really does provide challenge. And just to confirm to yourself and other members, there's a real challenge, but it's done professionally and ethically within that working group. And officers do respond positively to any questions and challenges. So, Joachim, and well done all involved in that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mark. David, did you do around you?
Just to confirm, well, it's a matter of a formality in a way, that report, and I recommend that you approve and endorse the levy. We endorsed the levy in January. This just confirms that formally.
David, so in that basis, so Chris, do you want to come in? Sorry.
Yeah, just very quickly, just for clarity. In terms of the current staffing levels and the proposed staffing levels, that will mean that we start next year with a requirement for £80,000 to cover the increased salary that we will need to going forward. Is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. This, in simple terms, yes, it is. But when we go through to budget scrutiny, one of the key areas that we do look at is the overall pay budget. And that will include looking at the whole time provision, the retained provision and the corporate departments. So we will be looking at that budget as a whole and whether our cost pressures, whether they can be mitigated through non-pay spend to avoid an overall cost pressure.
Thanks, that's good.
Okay, can I have somebody to propose that we accept the recommendations, please? Thank you, Chris. And a seconder. Diolch, Austin. Will you all show that you're in agreement? That's been passed. So we go on to the next item, which is the Treasury Management Strategy for 2025-26. Dwi'n meddwl, David, chi sy'n dod I fewn gyda hwnna?
I think, David, it's you who are coming in first, yes? Yes, I have had the privilege of presenting the most complicated one, Mr. Chairman. And what we have before us is the presentation of the proposed treasury management strategy for the period of a year from this month till next March. And this shows how the authority will borrow and invest and set policies that the finance officers will implement within. And you are asked as members to approve the Treasury Management Strategy for 24 to 26. 25-26. I will go not through everything, but the main points. But under the CIPFA Code of Conduct, the authority must approve a strategy and show that it is prudential annually. And this is something that the full authority must do rather than a committee. So we bring it to you today. And then after today, the audit committee will have scrutiny of the treasury management and the performance of treasury management during the year. And that must come to the full authority. So it's appropriate that scrutiny takes, that doesn't have to come to the full committee rather. So it's appropriate for it to happen at committee level. It's noted that we cannot invest capital over extensive numbers of years without borrowing. Also, the method of managing investments, and what we're talking about there is management of cash in the short term and the daily cash flows rather than in investment in stocks and shares, as with a pensions fund or something of that sort, and also keeping our reserves safe. That is the main criterion in all of this, in fact. Paragraph 9 talks about diversification, and what we really mean there is spreading things out in order to minimize the risk and having it in a number of pots. That means that if one of them becomes more risky, the rest of the money is safe. Paragraph 10 says more about the SLI principles, that is security, liquidity, and yield. We consider it in that order in making investments or deposits in banks. And 11, we are to continue to borrow to fund capital expenditure for 25-26. We estimate borrowing of 15.6 million. And the aim of the borrowing strategy is to extract a balance between low interest costs and security into the future. Now, I'm not going to go through the detail of the strategy, but can I refer you to some of the main points? First of all, the balance sheet projections, which is on page 51 of the pack at the top on the PDF. And you will see the projections there talking about internal borrowing of 31.8, and that is a little bit technical because we could not do that. We have no resource to do that, but that drives the following figure of additional investments, and that brings us to that 15 million of borrowing that we were talking about earlier. Because of the capital program, we consider that we have to borrow up to 15.6 million. Then I will ask that you jump over some of the technical content. And on page 52 of the PDF package, which is on page 5 of the strategy itself, and I ask that you approve here at the end of the paragraph on borrowing strategy, the authority may also borrow providing it is not above the limit, the authorized limit, and the figure there is 36.6 million. Can I ask that you recommend that as the authorized limit, and with the different, I mean, officers cannot go to borrow over the 36 million without further authorization from a full meeting of the authority, and that operational limit, if we get close to that, I don't think we will get close to it, but then we have to come to members, but we will try to. Then the minimum revenue provision there, the MRP, with a slightly higher level of likely borrowing, I propose a revenue minimum of 3 million. Moving on to page 8 of the strategy, which is 55 of the package. Regarding the investment aspect, there is a table there, table 3, counterparties and so on. I can confirm for you that there is no change from last year in that table. It's the same as what you approved for the year that has just come to an end. There's no reason to change it, and we do not propose to do so. And the following paragraph, we talk about the minimum credit rating that we are prepared to deposit on, and obviously we're not going is A-. We're not going to look for A-. We're going to look for double A's and A+. That is a fallback if we are not able to get a better credit rating than that for the deposits. And with that, I don't want to go through all the detail. I'm just asking that you approve the Treasury Management Strategy for 25-26 with the borrowing thresholds that I mentioned earlier. Thank you, David, for that overview. Can I
ask members for comments and questions, please? Councillor Anthony Wren. Good morning, Anthony.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to paragraph 11 in the report, where it says the authority estimates borrowing 15.6 million, that is new funding and refinancing existing loans. What percentage of that is new funding, new capital funding expenditure, sorry, and what is refinancing existing loans, please?
Yeah, if you look at page 51 of the pack, I'll try and get it in English. Hang on a moment for me to navigate to the page in English, Anthony. Yeah, page 51 of the pack, you'll see the balance sheet summary and forecast there, and the greyed out column for the financial year. You can see that the middle external borrowing row there reduces from 19 to 8.5. So there's some existing borrowing coming to an end which needs replenishing. That's the great majority of the 15 million really. The balance being increased spending, which is the increase in capital financing requirements on the top line from 35 to 40 million. So it's about 5 million and the balance is 10 million or so.
Are you happy with that, Anthony?
Thank you. Yeah, it's explained it. Refinancing loans to me is always something that I'm a little uncomfortable with, because when do you ever actually pay them off?
Yeah, we're not intending to undertake rescheduling of debts, Anthony. It's more that the existing loans we have are for a fixed expiry date, and some of them coming to an end, I think, this August. So we don't have any choice in the matter, really. It's we borrow for a fixed period, they come to an end, and we borrow again. So it's not a matter of us trying to play the markets with rescheduling.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for David? No, I can't see any other hands being raised. In that case, can we have somebody to propose to accept recommendations? Diolch Mark, diolch Austin. Will you show that you approve the recommendations? Diolch yn fawr. So we'll now move on to item number 14, which is the pay policy statement for 2025-26. I think it's over to you, Helen. Diolch.
Diolch yn fawr. again, another report the members will be familiar with because it is presented annually to the authority for approval. The document outlines the authority's approach to setting the pay of its employees, particularly the chief officers and the lowest paid employees, and its aim is to ensure transparency and compliance with the Localism Act 2011. This document also sets out how the authority's pay policies are fair, transparent and compliant with its legal requirements. Some of the elements of the statement itself, you will see that there is quite a lot of detail there about the remuneration information, and that details the pay of chief officers and the structures in place for all staff. And our staff groups include Grey Book colleagues who are operational staff and also staff conditioned to local government terms conditions who are either Green Book or Blue. The report also sets out the relationship between the lowest paid employees and their relationship with the pay of the highest member of staff, which is the Chief Fire Officer, and also sets out the policies on the recruitment, performance-related pay, bonuses, termination payments, and publication of remuneration. I'll turn to the Chief Officer's pay. The Chief Officer's pay is aligned with National Joint Council arrangements, and we also have periodical reviews and benchmarking against other fire and rescue authorities. That's known as the twin track approach. The last review was undertaken last year, and the information set out in the report remained valid. Notably, we don't pay bonuses. That's either for any of the chief officers or any of the staff group, or indeed performance-related pay. If there were to be any severance packages, and there hasn't been, they would require the approval of the authority, and they would also be detailed within the statement of accounts. For other staff, they also are conditioned to national agreed terms and conditions through the various councils. The median pay compared to the highest paid employee is a ratio of 1 to 4.15. And notably for our lowest paid employee, the salary, the whole time equivalent salary is just over 25,000 as at 1st of April 24, and that equates to a ratio of 1 to 6.21. Within the report, we are required to publish this, but actually the pay awards haven't yet been confirmed. So when they are, this report will be updated for those awards. Notably, support for lower paid staff or all staff, we do pay above the living wage. In addition, we have a range of benefits which include cycle to work, employee assistance programs, counselling, occupational health service, childcare vouchers, and a physiotherapy scheme. Across the public sector, the use of off-payroll arrangements, and that's where we pay individuals through their personal service companies, is quite a big issue. And notably, we do not routinely engage in off-payroll arrangements, but where it is necessary, we undertake all of the due diligence. That's internally and also with our tax advisors. The appendices within the report set out the various pay scales, and as I've just said, they relate to last year's pay because they haven't yet been updated for the 25-26 financial year, but we will do that as soon as they're available. Thank you, Chair, and I'm happy to take any queries on the report.
Thank you, Helen. So, as has been mentioned, this is an annual report that has to come before us for ratification. There aren't any surprises in the report. So, I don't know if anybody's got any questions or comments. Mark, do you want to come in? Thank you.
I'm just going to propose, Chair, that was all. Sorry, talking about.
Thank you. And unless anybody has any questions, comments here, Gareth, are you seconding that? Yeah, will you all show that you approve? That's great. Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr. So we go on.
Chair, I must leave now. I've got to go to Bangor for a hospital appointment.
Okay, all the best. Diolch yn fawr, Gwynfor.
Good luck, John.
Yeah.
So we go on to item number 15, which is the Community Risk Management Implementation Plan for 2025-26. And I think it's back to you, Ant, for this one. Thank you.
Yeah, Chair. Thank you. The purpose of this report is to provide an overview of the feedback received from our public consultation on the Community Risk Management Implementation Plan for 2025 to 2026 and the associated Equality Impact Assessment, and to seek approval of the final version of these documents. Members will note under the executive summary of the cover paper, you will see the legislative requirements placed on the authority that the objectives within the Community Risk Management Implementation Plan have been written to take account of. This is the second Community Risk Management Implementation Plan, which has been developed to support the delivery of the authority's 5-year Community Risk Management Plan. The Community Risk Management Plan aims to identify the risks facing the community and describes how the authority will manage those risks and continue to prevent and respond to fires and other emergencies. The public consultation of the Community Risk Management Implementation Plan, which contains the authority's improvement and wellbeing objectives for 25 to 26, was open between the 21st of October and the 16th of December last year. The response levels were 25% higher than that for the consultation for 2024 to 2025, although fewer respondents declared that they were members of staff. Support for the proposed improvement and wellbeing objectives was consistently high across each of the 5 principles for keeping our community safe, ranging between 99 and 96%. Members will also see within the report papers an equality impact analysis report. The overarching aim of this equality impact analysis is to highlight the specific themes that emerged from the feedback during the consultation. This analysis, potential risks of discrimination can be identified and mitigation can be implemented accordingly. Verbatim comments from the consultation respondents were also shared with the relevant heads of department or subject matter experts for review and consideration as to the impact, if any, that feedback would have upon their proposed objectives. The trade unions have been engaged within the development of the wellbeing objectives as part of our social partnership duty, and at the Joint Consultation and Negotiation Committee in February of this year, the trade union representative present agreed that consensus on the objectives had been reached. So therefore, the recommendations are, please, that members note the content of the feedback report and endorse the attached Community Risk Management Implementation Plan for 2025 to 2026 and the associated Equality Impact Assessment for publication. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Thank you, Anton. Members will see that this is a very comprehensive report. I'd just like to take the opportunity once more to just thank all the officers involved in producing this very valuable report. The good news is that it has already been scrutinised by the executive panel and approved. So I'll just throw it out now. Any other comments or questions from members, please? No, I can't see any hands being raised. So in that case, can I have somebody to propose the recommendations? Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Austin. Diolch yn fawr. Will you show you approve? Diolch yn fawr. Thank you, Ant. So we go on to item number 16, which is the Standards Committee Annual Report for 2024-25. And I think, Matt, you are introducing this one.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning. Bore da, pawb. Chair, each year the Standards Committee produces an annual report which summarises the work undertaken by the Standards Committee over the preceding year. This is the Standards Committee's 20th annual report, and it's for the financial year 24-25, so summarises the work they've done from the 1st of April 2024 to the 31st of March this year. Over this period, the Standards Committee has met 3 times, and the issues discussed at each of those meetings is summarised in the bullet points at pages 213 and 214 in the papers. The annual report is in final form and is presented to the Fire Authority for information, and members are asked to note the annual report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any comments or questions from members in relation to the annual report? I can't see any hands being raised. In that case, can somebody propose that we accept the recommendations, please? Thank you, Chris. Seconder. Thank you, Austin. Will you show that you approve? Diolch yn fawr. That's been passed. We go on to item number 17, which is the Local Pension Board Terms of Reference. And back to you, Helen, please. Diolch.
Diolch. Again, this is another report that's been through one of the committees. This one has been considered by the Local Pension Board. It's an annual report because we review the terms of reference on an annual basis. By way of background, the Firefighters Pension Scheme is devolved in Wales and the authority is the scheme manager. And to support yourselves as the authority in this function, the Pension Act requires the establishment of a local pension board. The terms of reference are reviewed and approved on an annual basis and are included today for your consideration and approval. Key points to note, the local pension board is not a decision-making board, but does provide advice and guidance to the scheme manager. It's made up of both employee and employer representatives in equal number, and that's to ensure that we hear the voice of those who are managing the scheme and those who participate in the scheme. And the local pension board should ideally meet on at least 4 occasions each year, and members should be conversant with the legislation and associated guidance of the scheme and the relevant policies and procedures. And what that does is it acknowledges the complexity of the schemes and ensures that those people advising yourselves are adequately qualified to do so. The terms of reference in the pack contain a recommendation of the local pension board to approve the terms of reference, and also the cover report highlights that the only change year on year is a recommendation to consider changing the quorum. There are 10 members of the local pension board made up of 5 employee and 5 employer, and it's proposed that the quorum for each meeting should be 3, with at least 1 employee and 1 employer member. I'm happy to take any queries on the terms of reference, but we are seeking approval today. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Any questions or comments from members, please? Dafydd, diolch yn fawr, Dafydd.
Dwi'n meddwl, Cadeirydd, a fi sydd o'r faint...
Yes, I think, Mr. Chairman, it is I who have the privilege of chairing the panel for this next year or two. And it was me who was behind the proposal to change the quorum. And as chair, I was a little concerned how many people we needed to turn up in order to hold the meeting at one point. And the membership, the new membership of this panel are very conscientious and they turn up. But before that, we had a number of people who at the last minute we didn't see, and just to change, there are 2 kinds of membership, one representing the employer and the other the employees in unions and so on. And we need one of each and one other in order to hold the meetings in the future, and that will ensure that we are able to continue to undertake the business that's needed and to make decisions, and it's good that we can ensure that we continue with the meetings. That's the main change, I think, that's before us. Thank you very much, David, for that explanation.
Chris, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I couldn't see anywhere in the report where we talk about investment strategy. I'm particularly keen that we look at some stage in the future in terms of divesting from non-ethical investments, and I couldn't see that in the report unless I've missed it.
Good question. Helen, do you want to come in? Thank you.
Thank you. It's a really interesting question because unique to the public sector is the fact that the local government pension scheme actually is asset-backed and does indeed invest. But the firefighters scheme in Wales and England as well is what's known as an unfunded scheme. So what that means is there are no underlying investments, but there is an underlying liability. And that is met so as people retire, their pension is paid from contributions into the scheme on an annual basis, and also a top-up grant from the Welsh Government. So to future meeting, when you receive the statement of accounts, you will note there's a pension fund within that, and that pension fund will set out all of the liabilities. So it's a great question, because certainly in local government land, the underlying investment is something that we do look at, but thankfully for the firefighters, we don't need to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dafydd, ydych chi eisiau dod i fewn eto? Diolch.
Yeah, just cadarnhau beth Helen oedd.
Just to confirm what Helen said, in fact, the firefighters pension fund is unfunded, as it were, so we do not have any place to influence investments because there are none. But on the other hand, there is a minority of the fire authority staff in the local government pension fund, Clwyd pension fund, but Flintshire County Council has its own pension panel, as well as the pensions panel, and it is they who influence and scrutinise investments of the Clwyd pension fund. Thank you, David.
So can we move to the recommendations? In that case, can I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Chris. If you show that you're in agreement, diolch yn fawr. So the next item on the agenda, once again, back to you, Helen, is the Firefighters Pension Scheme update on legal challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The firefighters' legal challenges are definitely not business as usual, but at the moment we are currently facing two. So for each meeting of the local pension board, we do receive an update on these national legal challenges. And at the very last meeting, the members of the local pension board recognised where we were, but also asked for this item to be presented to yourselves as scheme manager. Currently, we're dealing with two legal challenges. Some of those are common across the public sector, so the age discrimination to a greater or lesser extent, and the other one being the O'Brien judgment, which relates to part-time workers, is possibly less impactful for other schemes. So I'll deal with each of those separately. So the age remedy relates to the discrimination in the public sector. It's very well documented, and members of the authority will have received a number of reports from myself over the last 2 or 3 years. In very, very broad terms, it relates to the move from a final salary approach to a career average. And in addition to that, there's associated changes to the retirement age. So for our firefighters who are in the 1992 scheme, they could retire between the ages of 50 and 55. And under the 2015 scheme, which is career average, the retirement age is now 60. So as you can see, two significant jumps. In brief terms, what that means for us as a scheme manager is that for eligible staff, the payroll record for the period April 2015 through to March 2022 has to be reviewed and analysed on an individual basis. So we have to download every element of pay for every month for each individual. And then what we do is recreate that over both the final salary scheme and also the career average. In turn, the pension record is then updated and what is known as a remedial service statement is produced. However, for those who have already retired, the process has to be undertaken manually by the pension administrator. I think to say that the process has been extremely complicated is a massive understatement. And this is not only because of the complexity of the underlying records, but also because of the underpinning legislation that required it updating. For example, when you pay a lump sum more than 12 months after retirement, it should attract a tax charge of 40%, which would put those in scope to disadvantage. And to be able to waive that charge, there needed to be a change to the tax legislation. So it's about different pieces of legislation being updated. And then I think it's fair to say it's only when we started moving through it that all the little vagaries and nuances were identified. In addition to that, we've had a general election, which meant that some of those legislative changes have basically been delayed somewhat. Our members fall into a number of categories, from those who've retired through to the current members. And the highest priority for us are those people who are coming up to retirement or those who have retired and find themselves in detriment. The statutory deadline was the 31st of March this year, and we've been unable to achieve this. I think it's fair to say it's not unique to us, it's not unique to our sector, and it is across the public sector. I don't think anybody could have foreseen the complexity. What we are doing is that all staff retiring are being prioritised and receive their pension forecast based on the remedy. Staff who have retired without full protection or have retired through ill health have also been identified and are being worked through as a priority. We're currently working to a target date of the 30th of June for remaining staff, but I have to highlight a note of caution that does depend on those records being able to be fully reconciled. We have missed the statutory deadline, and accordingly, we have reported ourselves to the pensions regulator. The local pension board recognise these challenges, and they have done at every report. And in particular, they wish to convey to the authority the work that has been undertaken, including the commitment of the pensions team who've worked through these significant challenges alongside the normal business as usual. I'm going to pause there to take any queries on that particular item before I go into the second legal challenge.
Are there any comments or any questions? As you said, Helen, it's extremely complicated.
And if that wasn't enough, I'm afraid it gets more complicated for us because the second legal challenge relates to what is known as the O'Brien judgment. It's often referred to as the Matthews judgment. And in effect, this really does affect part-time workers. And for us, that will be our colleagues who work on the retained duty system. So historically, they were excluded from the pension scheme, but this was addressed back in about 2015 under what was known as the first choice exercise, and they were permitted to purchase pension entitlement right back to July 2000. Subsequently, there was a further challenge which said, well, actually, permitting them to buy it back to 2000 was an arbitrary date, and what it should do is you should be able to allow people to buy back their pension right through to the start of contract. That is the second legal challenge. That's been successful, and for us, that means that for over 600 staff, we have to effectively work back to their start of contract. And many of our retained colleagues who are in scope started their employment with us in the 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s. So you can absolutely appreciate this is a massive piece of work. Not unique to us, it's also applicable in England, Northern Ireland, and Scotland. The statutory deadline for us is the end of July. In England, they're seeking an extension of 12 months, and I believe the legal process to facilitate that has started. And the Welsh Government has confirmed that we may follow in Wales, but for us as a service, we will continue to work through them and continue to prioritise. What that means is that when somebody says, yes, I'm interested, please may I have an estimate, we will work through their record to provide an estimate, and we will prioritise those who are either retired or nearing retirement. But again, it's really hard, as you can appreciate. The first one is difficult going back to 2015, and the second one is really hard going back to the 1960s. Truth be told, we don't have payroll records going that far, but we do know whether people are employed or not. So in line with the national guidance, the default is there's a default that we need to work to, which is about a quarter of a whole-time salary. So really complex area, but we are working through them.
Thank you, Helen. Mark, have you got a question? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And as you say, complex, difficult, and we want everyone to be treated fairly. But I just think as members, we just need to understand, how do you manage? Is the risk ours financially, and how do we manage that risk, please, Helen?
I think ultimately, yes, the risk is ours because it will increase the liabilities of the pension fund. It will be picked up in the valuation. There has been an interim valuation undertaken by GAD. So for a number of years now, the pension liabilities have increased to reflect that. And that is one of the reasons for the increases that we've experienced over the last couple of years in employer contributions. So we won't necessarily have to pay a large lump sum into the pension scheme, but what you will see is over the forthcoming years, the employers' contributions will remain high as a consequence of that.
Okay. And just one final one. Obviously, you're a small, great team. The capacity to deal with this, is that okay? And I'll leave it there then, Chair.
I think really I can't stress enough the work and commitment of what is a very, very small pension scheme. It's probably a dilemma that we've been through, which is, can we expand it? Can we bring in more staff? The reality is that there are no staff to bring in, because not only are we dealing with this, but every single public sector pension scheme is dealing with it at the same time. So what we do know is we know who's in scope for both schemes, we know who the priorities are, and we are working through them. But it is a challenge. The individual records can take days to reconcile, and that's because people throughout their career change roles, take on temporary promotions, and have different allowances. So it is a struggle. But actually, at this moment in time, we're working very closely with our administrators to ensure that that we keep working through it.
Okay. Jochen Val for your efforts, and thanks for your response, Jochen Val.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions for Helen? I can't see any other hands being raised. So the recommendations are, it is recommended that members, 1, note the progress with implementing the McLeod judgment. 2, note that a report has been made to the pensions regulator as the service has not been able to achieve the statutory requirements. And 3, note the position regarding the implementation of the O'Brien judgment. Can I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mark. Will you show that you approve the recommendations? Diolch yn fawr. So we go on to the next item of the agenda, which is item number 19, which is the contract procedure rules summary. And I think it's back to you, Elgan, for this one. Diolch yn fawr, Elgan.
It is. Diolch yn. So the contract procedure rules, or CPR, has been sort of refreshed, updated, and brought into the 21st century. So the last version was published in November 2021, and then the updated version now aligns with the Procurement Act 2023, which was implemented a couple of months ago. This paper has been to Audit Committee, and it was recommended for approval of the CPR, but noting that unless it involves a specialist procurement, a minimum of 3 quotes should usually be obtained. The paper sort of highlights the key changes between the version that was published in November 2021 and the updated version, and they've been teased out in the paper just to make it obvious. I suppose the biggest or the key changes is a change to the thresholds of the contract values. So that's now been up to £30,000, and that is now aligned across all of Wales as well. So that will support with our procurement at scale or at collaboration with other fire services across Wales. There's been some terminology changes. So it now mentions most economically advantageous tender, which is now most advantageous tender, and value for money's most advantageous offer. And then there's a bit about roles and responsibilities in there as well, and how we've also included, instead of being paper envelopes and keeping sealed bids, it's now all done through a sort of electronic software. And then it does reference Sell to Wales across the tender as well, which is a platform we can use to engage with suppliers. And then there's just some minor wording and structural change across the report. But as it's been to Audit Committee, I won't go through it in more detail unless there's any questions.
Diolch, Elgan. As you pointed out, this has already been scrutinised by the Audit Committee. Are there any questions or comments? No, in that case, can we recommendation to approve the rules? Thank you, Chris. Diolch, Austin. Can you show that you approved? Diolch yn fawr. Thank you. That's been agreed. So moving on to item number 20, which is the Social Partnership Duty Annual Report. I think it's back to you, Ant, on this one. Thank you.
Yeah, the purpose of this report is to seek approval for the submission of our first annual Social Partnership Duty report to the Social Partnership Council for scrutiny and to publish the report on the North Wales Fire and Rescue Authority's website. The Social Partnership and Procurement Duty Wales Act 2023 fulfills a programme for government commitments to place social partnership at a statutory footing in Wales. On the 1st of April 2024, the new Social Partnership Duty on public bodies came into force in Wales. This duty requires the authority to produce an annual report to evidence how they have complied with the Social Partnership Duty created within the Act. The Social Partnership Duty requires the authority to seek consensus or compromise with recognised trade unions when setting their wellbeing objectives and making decisions of a strategic nature about the reasonable steps they intend to take to deliver those objectives. The report highlights on page 4 that notably all policies and procedures are highlighted for consultation prior to approval by the service leadership team, ensuring that matters of note or concern are addressed at the relevant time. During the course of the year, the following matters have been considered and recorded under the Social Partnership Duty: the emergency cover review, the development of a new training centre, our external review of culture, our station management framework, an agreement on proposed changes to promotion processes for operational staff to ensure fair, consistent and transparent approach. The duty also requires that the annual report must be agreed with the authority's recognised trade unions or contain a statement why it was not agreed. All the requirements of the Act have been discharged through the Joint Consultation and Negotiation Committee, including agreement upon the annual report itself. Therefore, members are kindly asked to note the Social Partnership Duty Report for 24-25.
Thank you very much, Ant. And as you pointed out, this has already been through the executive panel and has been approved. Any questions or comments? I think the report does highlight that we are certainly in fulfilling the obligations of the partnership requirements and involved in good practice. Deputy Chair, do you want to come in?
Can I just make a comment, Chair? This report was drawn up by Sandra Williams, who is retiring soon, I'm told. And can we wish her all the best in her retirement, Chair?
Yes, certainly I would support those comments. Thank you for highlighting that, Paul. Any questions or comments for the report? Can't see any hands being raised.
Chair, if I may, I made a slight mistake there. I said members are asked to note the report. It's actually to approve the annual Social Partnership Duty Report for submission to the Social Partnership Council, please.
Okay, thanks. And so can we have a proposal that we actually approve the report? Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Mark. Willie Show. Thank you very much. And we move on to the last item on the agenda, you'll be pleased to hear, which is item number 21, which is the appointment of the monitoring officer and treasurer. And I appreciate that Gareth and the deputy clerk have to leave, and also the treasurer at this point. And then over to you, Helen. Diolch.
Thank you, Diolch. The posts of monitoring officer and treasurer are statutory posts and they're confirmed in our constitution. These are these are not historically directly employed, but are let separately following a competitive process. The last competitive process took place in 2022 and contracts were let for a 3-year period. But at that time, it was agreed by yourselves that they could be extended for 2 years. A report went to the last meeting of the executive panel and for consideration, and they endorsed the recommendation of approving the contracts for a further 2 years. So we're seeking that approval today. The executive panel spoke at length under a part 2, and it was confirmed that the roles have been discharged as we would expect, and there are no performance issues that would need to be highlighted. So with your agreement, we're seeking that approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen, and pointed out the executive panel were very happy to approve the further extension of these 2-year contracts. If there's no questions, Gareth?
Yeah, just the one question. The monitoring officer, I presume the contract is with Flintshire Council. Therefore, you know, providing the correct officer is their problem. With Dafydd, it's with the individual. So I'm just wondering, you know, if it's a statutory requirement, if something happens to Dafydd, and hopefully it won't, he's looking really healthy this morning. But where do we stand as an authority?
Couple of points of assurance and clarification. The contract with for the monitoring officer is let with Flintshire for a named officer, and that named officer is Gareth, and we put that deputy in place through Matt. There are other members of his team as well. You're entirely right. That contract with Dafydd is directly with Dafydd, which is the same for a number of local authorities. In the event, and we have faced that historically with the previous Section 151 officer, and in the event of that, either myself or Elgan, as qualified and experienced CIPFA accountants, could pick that up. The reason that we go externally is to provide that separation between the authority and the service, but for a short period of time, it can be accommodated.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, Gareth. If there's no other comments or questions, can I? Oh, Gareth Sandilands, Gareth?
No, just to propose it. Thank you.
Okay, a seconder. Thank you, Mark. Will you show that you approve the recommendations? Diolch yn fawr, that's been passed. That brings today's meeting to an end. Can I thank everybody for their participation and contributions? Diolch yn fawr, pawb. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Diolch, Dylan.
Yeah.